You know, I always had the assumption that larger figures are easier to paint due to the larger surface areas and not needing to do the finer intricate details. But in reality, it's not always the case. Figures like the movie Carnage and Surtur were pretty fun to paint, but the X-Men 97 Sentinel and the Gamerverse Juggernaut were not. Maybe it's the cel-shading, or maybe it's because they're much heavier to hold with one hand. It didn't help that I used the wrong color on Juggernaut too. And on top of that, I was also experiencing a lot of paint rub on his arms. It was quite a challenge as I ended up needing 2 weeks to finish him. But I'm pretty happy with how the Juggernaut turned out. He does look a bit like his video game counterpart. But you know what's just as challenging? Making a stop motion video with 2 figures and a moving camera. Juggernaut was so big you could barely see his arms in the shorts, even though I animated them. You can also tell I gave up near the end. I didn't know what to do anymore. That's why Wolverine was glitching out. And with Juggernaut done, it is time to work on the next Gamerverse figure. This time, it's gonna be Captain America. I want something a bit easier to paint this week. This figure seems to be the one.
Let's deconstruct this figure.
I actually never played as Captain America in the game. Having a shield as a weapon just didn't make sense to me as a kid, so I never used him. Wolverine, Spider-Man, and Iron Man were so much more fun to use. But you know what this figure reminds me of though? The Captain America from the Spider-Man animated series. They have like the exact same boxy body shape. But that cap had a weird light shade of blue on him. That said, I'm not trying to make him look more like his cartoon self. This figure already looks great the way he is out of the box. I want mine to have that Marvel vs. Capcom look to him. In the game, he is cel-shaded and has these lines on his muscles. Another thing I noticed is that there's this lighter blue highlight on him. This may sound odd, but I love this shield. I don't own any other comic book Cap figures, so I only have the live action shields to compare this with. The print on this shield is so clean. It is nice and thin, and it has a subtle dome shape to it. And the effect piece that snaps onto the shield is also a nice touch. If there's one thing I really like about this wave so far, is that all the effect pieces are very well made. So, will this be one of the easier figures to paint? Or am I gonna suffer again? Let's find out.
Hello, this is Ken. I like making things. Whether it's repainting my figures or making diorama displays, I love making things look awesome. My goal is to elevate my figures so they can shine on my display. Join my DIY adventure as I ask myself the same question every week. Can I make it?
Let's start with the blue. I actually like the blue they used. It's a nice vibrant blue, and it has this frosted finish on it. But because I want mine to be as matte as possible, and I also want to add shading and highlights, I'm gonna go over the entire figure with a bit of paint. The neon blue I have is very sheer, and it's a pretty similar shade, so let me add a thin layer of it over the figure, so that I have a base coat of paint to work with. Next, the red. I normally prefer a deeper true red, but I'm gonna start with the orange red as a base first, so that I can go deeper later on. Besides, the orange red has more of a video game look to it. Okay, I'm gonna go over the white areas as well. The plastic is actually already pretty matte already, but just like the other colors, I'm adding this as a base layer for the shading colors I'm adding later on. This will also fix the little minor inconsistencies here and there. One more base layer to cover. The skin tone. Looking at the sprites, his skin tone appears to be a touch darker. But I like the color that's already there. I just don't love the shine. So I'm gonna mix myself a very similar color to mattify it, and patch up the small imperfections on his ears. Alright, here's what he looks like with the base colors painted. He's now nice and matte. Let's add some shading, starting with the blue. I'm gonna focus on outlining his muscles and following the natural shadows on the sunken areas. Okay, this is off topic, but I rewatched The Age of Ultron again recently, and I have some thoughts. The movie overall is still a bit underwhelming, but there are a lot of little things that I enjoyed. First of all, Wanda felt so small compared to her later appearances. She was constantly getting talked over by others, and while she was already pretty powerful, they did a great job teasing her true potential. We got to see her grow and develop in her later appearances. And speaking of other movies, I also really appreciate that Phase 2 was all connected from movie to movie. There were things that connect to Winter Soldier, to the Age of Ultron, to Ant-Man, to Civil War. Like how Strucker mentioning that he technically worked for S.H.I.E.L.D. and not Hydra. Or how at the party, Sam told Steve that avenging was not his world, but he would continue to look for Bucky. And then by the end of Age of Ultron, we see him join the Avengers. We then see Sam next in Ant-Man, where he tried to stop Scott from stealing at the Avengers compound. And then Scott was recruited in Civil War. I miss these little small details that connect the movies together. The only connection that I remember recently is from Multiverse of Madness, where Doctor Strange briefly mentions Spider-Man to America Chavez. I feel like this is what the current MCU is missing. Introducing new characters isn't the problem, it's a lack of connectivity. Anyway, I'm adding the highlights now. I'm focusing on the collarbone and the upper chest area, and the right side of Cap. My idea for these figures is that I want the heroes to be on the left side of the stage, and the villains to be on the right, to reflect how they're positioned when we play the games as the heroes. So I want the lighting to be consistent. But I'm also a bit worried because I don't know how this paint is gonna look when it's dried. I mixed a bit of light blue into the neon blue, but because of the sheer nature of the neon blue, it may dry lighter or darker, or even splotchy. I won't know until it's dried. So I'm gonna go one layer at a time and monitor the result until I get to the color I'm aiming for. Okay, it's the next day. Look at that, that looks pretty good. But I lost the shading I added earlier, so let me add them back in. But this time, I'm using a different blue. I found a couple of bottles of blue acrylic paint at a discount store. The blue I have are either too dark or muted. The new ones I got appear to be punchier. So let me try this one on Cap. Ooh, okay, I don't mind the color. I feel like this is more opaque than my dollar store paint, and it's also thicker, like it will dry texture if I don't even out my strokes. But overall, I don't mind it. I can always use a more vibrant blue. There we go. There's more dimension to the blue now. Let's do the same thing with the red. I'm going to use this deeper red as a shading color, adding it to the left side of his right boot, and painting the entire left boot with this color. Done. It is not super noticeable, but there's a subtle difference between the left and right boot. Let me add this color to the left side of his gloves as well. And let me define his abs a bit. Gonna make sure those six packs are visible. Okay, now I need an even darker red for his left boot. I don't want it too dark, so I only added a little bit of brown to deepen the color. And a little bit of this on his hands. Okay, almost there. Now I need a bit of shading for the white. This is a bit scary because I've never really done shading on white before. But according to the sprites, it's pretty much just a light blue. So let's see how this looks. The good thing is, I'm not experiencing any paint rub. Juggernaut was giving me so much trouble. And it wasn't just the arms either. Because he's so top heavy and his legs aren't the most stable, he fell a couple of times, and every time he fell, a bit of paint would get damaged. I had to touch up and patch the paint multiple times, so I'm just happy I don't have to deal with that with Cap. Alright, a little bit more shading on this left arm. And I got distracted and made the lines thicker and thicker. I can't really undo it now, so I gotta commit to this. So let me emphasize the shading on this side even more. One thing I don't love about cel shading is that I can't really undo my progress. I mean, I can. I either have to carefully remove the paint I added or completely cover it up and try to match the colors again. Neither is ideal or fun. But at the same time, I won't know unless I try. If I let fear stop me, then I'll just end up with the most basic flat colors. I guess the sort of good thing is, I have it documented in my videos. So if things do go south, I can always just rewind a bit and admire what I had. Anyway, I feel ambitious. I don't love how big his chest looks. That's a weird statement. His chest is huge in the cartoon, but not in the game. So I'm going to try and shrink it visually with the neon blue, the mid-tone color. I don't know if it's going to work, but again, I won't know unless I try it. I'm going to add this color here and there all over the figure as well, to balance it out so that it doesn't look too out of place. Ta-da! That actually worked. At least to me it worked. The chest appears smaller to me now. There's one more thing I want to touch up, and that's the belt buckle. In the game, it's more like a belt plate than a belt buckle. Does this mean that this is a reused part from another Cap figure? I'm gonna try the other blue I got. Yes, the buckle is supposed to be silver, but looking at the sprites, it's not even gray. It's more like a dark blue. And the final part I want to paint is the belt. I'm just painting over it to get rid of the shine. Almost there. I'm gonna leave the shield as is. The colors are already great. And due to the way the effect piece snaps onto it, I feel like it's better to leave it unpainted, so that I don't have to deal with the paint rub at all. But what I can do is to emphasize those impact lines a bit more. I'm gonna use a stiff flat brush and just rub a bit of lighter blue on those lines. If I tackle it at an angle, the bristles should only hit the raised areas, making this process somewhat easy to do, as long as I'm careful. Look at that! That looks more impactful already. Alright, let's seal everything with a clear matte spray. Here's my Gamerverse Captain America all painted. I still stand by that the original figure was pretty good, but I really like how mine turned out. The cel shading effect isn't as drastic as Wolverine or Juggernaut's, but I feel like I did a pretty good job making Cap look both more 2D and 3D. It kinda reminds me of the artwork from the game, like a blend of the official artwork and the game sprites. Oh, I did go in and retouch the skin tone a bit. I added a hint of red to make the overall skin tone more pinkish. While this isn't my favorite cel shaded figure, I still think I did a pretty decent job. What do you think? Do you like what I've done? Let me know down below. I was worried that the way the shield snaps onto the wrist would cause issues. But to be honest, the paint rub isn't that noticeable. The orange red color is pretty similar to the color of the plastic, so you can't really tell that there's paint rub there. So that's nice. Let's see how he looks with my other gamerverse figures. Ooh, they look cohesive as a group. My vision is coming together nicely. But here's the real test. Can I recreate his poses from the game? Okay, not that bad. Sure. A weird pose to recreate. Okay, that's cool. His arms look short here. This one's okay. He's not too difficult to balance. With a bit of fiddling, he can balance on his own. You know what? He's actually pretty fun to pose. Maybe it's because Cap's poses are usually more stoic, so his poses aren't overly complicated to do. The shield effect actually looks pretty awesome, but I probably won't display mine with it on, because it's too big and heavy. I want to be able to see Cap's face, and I don't want to add additional stress on his wrists. But I still want to give props to Hasbro, because it's very well done. I understand that cel shading isn't for everyone, but you can't deny that these guys look great together. They don't look out of place against each other. There's something about the flat, vibrant colors that just make these figures pop. Alright, let's end this with a photo shoot. It wasn't my intention, but this figure has that hand-drawn look to him. Some of these shots really remind me of Bengus's artwork. So overall, this is a win. I need this win after struggling with Juggernaut. And hopefully I can ride this momentum and get more Gamerverse figures done. There's still quite a handful to do. So give this video a like and hype, and subscribe to see more content like this. And until then, stay inspired and I'll see you soon. I can make it, so can you.